And so I was fortunate enough, again, going back to the labs, that one summer I was exposed to CAD, computer-aided design at that time. And so got to see how we do, moving from what we used to do to using computers to design a product. So simulation is very broad, right? So what I've been focusing on is what I like to call physics-based simulation, okay? So how do you take those equations that basically govern how things work around us and make that available through a computer software? But what I'm talking about, what drives me, is physics-based simulation, where at the end of the day, we're solving for the laws of nature and trying to understand and predict how things might behave. You can use simulation to understand, first of all, have confidence that the design choices you're making are going to work. Simulation plays a key role in making sure that you get closer and closer to that zero prototyping goal.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Professor Mahesh Podcast, your resource to help you make informed career decisions. As we like to think, this is your future simplified. We've already talked in 2 previous episodes about this world of simulations. I want to come back to that again because there is so much excitement, so much physics, and so many possibilities that are now getting encoded in silico, that I feel like we need to go back, double click on it one more time, go dive deep into the career possibilities, into the new and emerging careers that are happening in this domain. To help us understand this space, help us parse this space, it's a delight to have an old friend, a classmate, join me for this conversation, Dr. Mahesh Kailasam from Hexagon Manufacturing Intelligence. He leads their simulations business and has been in this world, has been steeped in this world of simulations for a very long time. So welcome, Mahesh, and it's an absolute delight to have you back at IIT Madras.
Thank you. So it's always a pleasure to come back home in some ways. And again, good to talk to another Mahesh as well, right? So
yes.
So simulation has been my life. I actually started here at IIT Madras. And I've been doing this for over 30 years now, and in different ways. And I'm happy to share the journey that I've been on and why I believe simulation is probably one of the best careers that anybody can have. I would probably do the same if I had a choice.
That's a straight up bat for it up front. Wonderful to have that positive note up front. Yeah. Let's start with your own training.
Yeah.
As a young man in Hyderabad, you grew up in a very intellectual environment. I'm sure that had a role to play. Let's start there.
Yeah,
your school.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I grew up in the Defense Labs quarters in Hyderabad, which is surrounded by lots of defense labs, so Defense Metallurgical Research Lab, DRDL, DLRL. There's Midhani for materials, and BDL not so far away. So definitely the center of a lot of research and innovation that's happening in India. So how did that help me? I think looking around, pretty much every, my friend's parent, pretty much everybody was a scientist of some kind. So the conversations were certainly very intellectual. And I'll also say the labs did play a key role in helping us. So I went to a Kendriya Vidyalaya there, and the KV was associated with the labs. And so we did get the support of the labs as well. So for example, the first time, and probably the only time I saw an electron microscope was at one of those labs, right? So imagine being able to see that when you're in high school and how excited you might get, right? So I would say that environment definitely played a role in my inspiration for going after science, technology, engineering, and I think again I can say the same for my classmates from school as well. Many of them are engineers and doctors. Of course, at that time, everybody was an engineer or a doctor. But the labs, the people around us, did play a key role in giving me direction, giving me a sense of purpose of what I wanted to do.
And then IIT Madras happened.
That's correct. So, so IIT Madras happened. But before that, I was not entirely sure engineering was what I wanted to do. Okay, so I had couple of different choices.
You were a good mathematician, if I
exactly. So that's what I was going to touch upon. So I did participate in the Indian Maths Olympiad, and I was, I think, ranked 3 or something like that. And so even at that time, there was discussions on, okay, would a math career be interesting, and would a math career be something that we could take? So I did debate that quite significantly, but then I chose to go to IITM. But I'll come back to why math is still important later on. At the same time, I also had a choice to go into medicine. So I didn't. So we all studied biology at that time. I don't know the curriculum right now. So I did have a choice of saying, okay, should I go to medical school and I do an MBBS? So I figured that IITM was better. No regrets at all. I had a great time. But the key point is the math focus, the biology focus, that did influence my career choices, some of the things that I felt I could do, give me the confidence that I could do something different. So I think the high school education, be exposing yourselves to different options, different choices, does come back and help you later on in your career.
And you were introduced to finite element methods, even here at IIT Madras, which sort of formed the backbone of a lot of what you did later on.
Right. So when I was here, so as everybody at that time, and I'm sure even now, so there's a final year project that you have to do, and so still was not sure what exactly I wanted to do at that time. And I think so. I tried a couple of different things. Initially, one summer I worked with on automotive exhaust systems, trying to see if automotive engineering was something that I would be interested in. There was a great project. I even had the first opportunity to present a paper here at IITM. So that was a good exposure as well. But I felt I needed something more, something different. And so I was fortunate enough, again, going back to the labs, that one summer I was exposed to CAD, computer-aided design at that time. And so got to see how we do, moving from what we used to do to using computers to design a product. So then that got me introduced to simulation. That was the first time I heard about simulation and finite element analysis, still in its infancy. But when I came back, I was fortunate enough that we had Dr. Krishna Kumar here, who was at that time and even now continues to pioneer finite elements. So I worked with him on my final year project to develop a new type of an element at that time. So I still have a copy of my dissertation or the thesis at that time. Very proud of the work we did. Fortunately, there were other students at that time interested in similar topics. So we learned from each other, and one of them is now a professor at IISc, as you know. So he was also interested in mechanics and topics like that. And eventually, I think we had about 5 or 6 of us from that graduating batch who worked on mechanics and simulations and topics like that when we went to grad school. So journey started here. The first time I actually used a commercial simulation software was here at IITM. And so that's in some ways the beginning of the journey.
Wow. Yeah. And then the cherry on top for your education happened at Penn.
That's correct. So I went to the U.S. To the University of Pennsylvania, worked on my master's and PhD. So there it was initially not as much numerical, not as much simulation. So I went back to the fundamentals, looking at constitutive behavior, how materials behave, how materials might behave under, how the microstructure of materials might change under deformation and so on. So that was my dissertation. Then I was lucky enough to have another professor who was very well known in the simulation area said, "You've done all this work. How about trying to simulate some of this behavior to see if you can actually run a simulation and see how the material properties actually change?" So that did extend my PhD a little bit longer, but I'm actually very grateful for that opportunity as well. And so I wrote up a user subroutine at that time to model materials, got that into the code, and finished my PhD doing some simulations. And so that was I would say, the first time I had to also start thinking about, should I start looking at simulation applications, basically go to industry and use simulations, or should I actually go into a career path that will allow me to develop the simulation tools that others can use? So that was the exposure that I got there. And so at graduation, again, a dilemma there. I was thinking, should I go into industry where simulation is actually being used, which is one career path, of course, go into these many companies that develop the simulation software and work in that space. So again, I think I was fortunate enough that I had professors and others helping me or opening my eyes to saying, don't just stay with the mathematical constitutive modeling, but think about how do you apply that? How do you convert that into computer software? So
those early teachers from schools, undergraduate, really make a difference to people's lives and careers. Like in your case, I'm sure you alluded to about 4 or 5 already who made a difference to the way you think.
Right.
Even in this short time, we've used the word simulate and simulations about a dozen times. Let's get some fundamental definitions out of the way.
Yeah.
It can mean different things to different people. So what's your working definition of a simulation?
Yeah, so simulation is very broad, right? So what I've been focusing on is what I like to call physics-based simulation, okay? So in other words, there's laws of physics that we use to inform how things might work, okay? So again, in the case, it could be simple structures where you're talking about, it could be Hooke's law or something that gets more complex into nonlinear materials, to fluids where you're talking about Navier-Stokes and stuff like that. Or in the case of electromagnetics, you're looking at Maxwell's equations and so on. So how do you take those equations that basically govern how things work around us and make that available through a computer software so you can predict how things might behave? That's what I mean by simulation. Of course, you can use simulation in other fields as well. There's financial simulation and other aspects of simulation. But what I'm talking about, what drives me, is physics-based simulation, where at the end of the day, we're solving for the laws of nature and trying to understand and predict how things might behave.
I hear this word analysis and simulation. So you say finite element analysis.
Correct.
What in your view is analysis and what is simulation?
Yeah, so simulation is, I would say, the broader concept of how can you predict how things are going to behave. Analysis is going a little bit deeper to understand what exactly is happening, right? So for example, if you take a car, you might run different kinds of simulations to understand the behavior. It could be aerodynamics, it could be the acoustics, it could be the noise and vibration, ride and handling, all of those different aspects. So there are simulations that you perform to say, okay, how is the wind noise, or what's the wind resistance, things like that. But you then need to go deeper to analyze what exactly is happening there. How do you change your designs? How do you make adjustments so that you can provide a better product, a better quality product to the world? So simulation is broader. Analysis goes a little bit deeper to understand what is happening using those simulation technologies to then make decisions. That's where your engineering comes into play, right? So you're not just running some software and then looking at some maybe impressive images or videos, but you actually need to analyze what's happening. So that's where the analysis comes into play.
Wonderful. Let's start to talk about some use cases of simulations and some value that customers have, industry is starting to see from the use of simulations. What started out, at least in my opinion, as an analysis tool, today has become a development tool. So let's talk about product development and where is simulations as a tool available for a product developer?
I do feel that simulation has come a long way. So maybe 20 years ago, simulation was starting to be used by companies to help design products, make sure that those designs would work properly when eventually their products are made. Now, I would say it's pretty much an integral part of the development process at almost any company that makes any products for various reasons, right? So one is you can use simulation to understand, first of all, have confidence that the design choices you're making are going to work. That could be the materials, it could be the dimensions, it could be other characteristics. The choices that you're making, do you have the confidence that that design is going to work properly? At the end of the day, it also helps them save time because they're not going to be iterating too many times after a prototype has been.
Today, it's possibly even the case that there is no iteration after the design is done, right?
Yeah, exactly. So almost every industry talks about zero prototyping, shift to left. There are different terminologies out there. So yes, so the goal for most of these companies is to make sure that the first product that you make is is almost perfect, right? So you don't have to go back and change the design or go through and make more prototypes, which can be very time consuming, expensive. And so simulation plays a key role in making sure that you get closer and closer to that zero prototyping goal. And there's a lot that happens there. So again, the big change that I would say is happening in the industry is not only focusing on the validation of the design, right? So that was the main focus. So is this design going to work? Now everybody wants to know, can I make this product correct the first time? So that brings simulation into the world of manufacturing.
Yeah.
So you want to understand, you're doing a whole bunch of welding. Is that going to cause distortions? Is it going to cause the residual stresses that show up? Is that going to cause problems in the future for fatigue life and things like that? So you want to take into account the manufacturing processes, the manufacturing choices that are being made, so that the first prototype that you make is as good as the design that was originally intended. So that's a big shift. So it's one thing to say the design choices are correct. Another thing to say that I know how to make this product within the tolerances of your manufacturing processes, right? So there's always variability, there's materials, there's all kinds of changes that can happen. How do you know that you can make that product and that product is going to match your design intent? So that's really essential for the shift to zero or shift left idea.
That's mind-boggling that you can design a product and sort of manufacture it the way you would manufacture on the shop floor,
right,
using these same physics-based laws as the backbone.
Exactly. So
and then you can can you also now optimize the manufacturing in silico itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the direction we're going in. But before I answer that, I do want to touch upon another experience I had at IITM, right? So I was a mechanical engineering student, but I took courses in the metallurgy department, which is where I got exposed to metal forming and things like that. And of course, there are labs here for that. And as a first year student, I think all of us did welding, but we didn't really understand, okay, how do I know that the weld quality is good? Okay,
yeah.
In the workshop, maybe visual inspection and saying, okay, this is good enough, but there's more to that, right? So some of the metallurgy, the courses I took in the metallurgy department opened my eyes to, for the first time, quality that comes from manufacturing, right? And so that again feeds into the overall experience I've had from simulation. So going back to your question, so absolutely yes. So the goal is to try and optimize the manufacturing process from multiple angles. The first could be just from a cost perspective. How much material do you need? Okay, so you're going through sheet metal manufacturing, stamping processes. There's always going to be some wastage. How can you minimize that wastage, right? So that's a cost question, okay? And you can use simulation to figure out, okay, how much sheet do you need, because the sheet's going to be bent and cut, and different operations are going to be performed on that. So to optimize the material. So that's a big factor in manufacturing optimization. Then during the manufacturing process, how fast do you manufacture it? How quickly can you weld, okay? All of those things start affecting the quality of the product that you're making, right? So there's always an optimization element that comes into play when it comes to manufacturing. Last point, which is actually very exciting for us, is to simulate the entire assembly process. So think of again, let's use a car as an example. Now you have different suppliers providing different parts, or maybe parts are coming from different factories, and they all have to be assembled together. Now, how do you know that everything is going to come together in the proper manner? The gaps, you don't want a small gap that could affect the acoustics or the noise or the vibration characteristics. How do you simulate all of that to make sure that the final car that you assemble is going to meet your requirements? So all of that can also be simulated, and to give in this case, the car makers the confidence that their processes are optimal, so that first of all, it's fast enough, there's less wastage, that everything is going to come together with matching the design intent.
So I've heard of manufacturing engineering careers, people on the shop floor managing the process. This is a completely different angle to a manufacturing engineering career. Tell us, what would be the training of a manufacturing simulations person? What sort of early training would you suggest they should start with, and what are some things they should do to get into this space?
Yeah, great question. I find simulation actually to be quite flexible in terms of your career paths. Okay, so at the end, again, goes back to the physics that I was talking about. Okay, so there are many engineering disciplines that help you prepare for a career in simulation, give you the flexibility to move from one industry to another. So I mentioned I was a mechanical engineer, got exposure to some courses in the metallurgy department. We also have plenty of colleagues and friends who are civil engineers, okay, or biomedical engineers. So at the end of the day, once you're familiar with the physics, okay, I think you can move your career as you feel appropriate. Okay, so in the case of manufacturing engineers, you could come from any of those backgrounds. Of course, you have an advantage if you were more mechanical engineering, or if a university offers a manufacturing engineering course, you're taken that course, or metallurgy, as I mentioned. Right? So at the end of the day, you understand the physics, then you need to understand the manufacturing processes. And there are a whole lot of manufacturing processes, right? So more traditional welding, forming kind of ones, to additive manufacturing, which is becoming pretty big. Then metals versus polymers, all of those choices. So again, at the end of the day, understanding of materials, physics, that will help you prepare for manufacturing career. And the tools, you can learn that. I mean, our job is to make the sort of simulation software we provide as easy to learn as possible.
Sure.
We of course have we make available training materials for students, student editions, and so on. So you can learn the software. At the end of the day, I would still focus on the physics, the mechanics, and material behavior, things like that will help you understand the manufacturing processes better.
Last question on this topic. Material selection is integral to the whole product design process. How can a simulations tool help me with material selection?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that is close to my heart, because, as I said, my PhD was on constitutive modeling, material behavior, and how the response of the material changes based on the manufacturing process you pick, right? So there are different levels, and again, I think this will give your listeners an idea of the career choices you could make. So at the beginning, you might have material like steel or plastics or rubber, which have their own characteristics, which I would say are reasonably well understood. But again, there are specialist materials that always come into play, right? So that, and then I'll explain how those choices affect simulation just a bit. But you could go to a different length scale altogether. Start saying, I need a material that behaves in a certain way. You might have a stress strain curve, or you might have a particular loading behavior, that response that you need from the material. Okay, and so how do you design a material? Okay, how do you pick the material, the microstructure? How do you pick the matrix and the other ingredients that go into that material? So that's a fascinating area for people who are interested in material science, right? So you're basically inventing new materials that then go into start becoming used in your products. So to go back to your question, the material choices affect pretty much every product, right? So it could be the vibration characteristics. You want damping, you want it to survive accidents like a drop or something like that. It could be the protection. So you need to have materials that protect the occupant in the case of a car. And so there's material choices affect pretty much the entire behavior of the car. Where simulations come into play is, again, if you have the physics model properly, you can change the material and say, okay, instead of material A, I'm going to use material B. You run your simulations and you see how the product behaves. Is it still matching the design intent that you had in mind? Is it still going to survive the conditions that you had in mind? So it allows you to rapidly change materials and run your simulations, get an assessment of whether a new material is going to help you come up with a better design, maybe help you make sure that the product is going to last longer. So at the end of the day, make sure that the consumers are going to be satisfied with that. So simulation has reached a point where you can quickly switch materials, make assessments of how the product is going to behave. And it goes all the way. Now we're starting to look at tying together the different length scales as well. So we're at a point where you can say, okay, I'm going to design a new material with certain characteristics, and tell me how is the final product going to behave, right? So connecting what might have been silos in the past. You might have a materials scientist working somewhere. Then there's a materials lab that does the test curves. Then you have the choices, the supplier saying, okay, I'm going to provide this to, again, a car or a plane or a phone maker. They decide whether that material is right for them. So you have these silos, and now it is possible to use simulation technology to say, what will a change in at the microstructure level mean for the system level behavior of the product? That's pretty fascinating.
It is super fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So what I'm hearing you say is a young student out there, an undergrad student listening, you are encouraging that they should get their fundamentals strong first. Right? The tools can come a little later. It's important to gain knowledge of the various simulations tools that are out there. But getting the fundamentals strong will help them transition into this world far easier. Now, the world of simulations is now going beyond just the first prototyping stage into becoming more like a living twin of the product. Where is that world, and what does that world hold as a promise?
Yeah, it's again, as I said, you can see why I love this space, right? So you think you're done with simulation and saying, okay, now I've helped companies, or we've helped companies make sure that their first prototype is going to be good. Then something new comes along.
Yeah.
so digital twin, as everybody talks about, I mean, there are different terminologies for that. So by digital twin, at least the way I look at it is, it's not just a copy of what is a real product. Okay. It's meaning it's not just a copy in sense of dimensions and things like that.
That's a drawing.
Exactly. So what we're saying is, going back to the physics, will this digital twin reflect the real world product, not just at the time of, when it comes out of the shop, the factory? Because as I said, we already have technologies to make sure that the products that are coming out match the design intent. But the moment it's out in the real world, things start changing. You drive a car, okay, the tires wear out a little bit, right? Or you might have a ding here or there. Now, how is that product going to behave? Is there a safety concern, or has the performance characteristics changed so much that you need to do something about it, right? So that's what I mean by a digital twin. A digital twin is a living version of what's out there in the real world, okay? And lots of, I would say, technology is coming together to make that possible. As an example, we've been working with some customers who have sensors on their gears and other drivetrains that tell them what's happening in those systems. Okay, and we have a digital twin of that product that allows us to say, okay, now you probably need to bring in that fleet for maintenance, right? So that's the power of a simulation-based digital twin, where if you're able to reflect the real world journey of a product, so it's not just done at time of manufacture, but as it goes through the world. It could be harsh driving conditions, it could be accidents, it could be overload conditions. How does that impact the product over its lifetime? So that's where the power of digital twin comes in. I think there's a lot more that needs to be done there, but it's evolving pretty rapidly. And I think we're going to see a time where most of the cars already, or vehicles, or any machinery have sensors in there that provide information that will allow us to, again, using simulations to predict what needs to be done to the real world product. It's a very fascinating area for me personally. So,
what's the let's understand this a little better. What's the customer's motivation to twin one of their products in your environment?
Yeah. So again, going back to the example I gave, and I'll come to another one as well, is you don't need to bring in in that case it was farm equipment, agriculture equipment. You don't have to bring it into a facility to be inspected and to figure out what happened. That's downtime. So you don't want your equipment to be sent somewhere. Maybe the closest facility is, I don't know how far away. Then it takes time to get there, inspected, brought back, and that's loss of productivity. So by instrumenting the equipment, instrumenting the machinery, and tying it back to a digital representation, we can provide more real-time information on what needs to be done to the system. So that's the advantage for many of our customers, that again, in the case of the agriculture equipment, you don't want downtime to your fleet, so it helps from a fleet management perspective, right?
So this idea of a digital twin, like you said, goes beyond just the first prototype.
Correct.
And now a simulations engineer is embedded as a value creator for the life of that product.
Right.
So that's a career prospect that's now, it's like on steroids. It's amplified, right?
Exactly. So the actually that's a great point. So I would present it in a slightly different way. So if you look in the simulation world, everybody talks about democratization of simulation.
Yeah.
Okay. So the meaning for that was, okay, simulation was always done by experts. How can we make simulation much more accessible to everybody? Okay. Certainly engineers, but maybe non-engineers as well, right? And that journey has been underway for a while now, and I think we're getting to a point where it really is becoming meaningful. So as an example, in the past you would have an expert again, where I use that term because you have to understand the physics, you have to understand the simulation tools, you have to understand the challenge. Not too many of them are available for any given topic, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make simulation more accessible to undergraduate engineers or high school students, where they have a good foundation in physics, but they can still make some design choices, right? And that's the direction where the industry has moved. So now you have design engineers who still understand the products that they're building, but they may not have the deep physics knowledge or the deep, the advanced knowledge of simulation tools, but they can still use simulation to make early decisions. Okay, that saves time. You avoid choices ahead of time. Now we're getting to a point where we can also make simulation much more accessible because of some of the AI technologies that are emerging, right? So can we use simulations to package up an engine, think of it as an engine that will allow you to ask questions and you get answers. So I still remember we were trying to design these expert systems 20 years ago or whenever I was here. And now that's becoming reality, where experts can use simulations, package it up, expose it to non-simulation experts or non-people who don't have very much physics background, but who understand the product, to say, okay, how do my design choices affect the behavior of the product? So that's another emerging area where you can start seeing computer science and AI coming into play with hardcore mechanical engineering, materials engineering, or or civil engineering for that matter. So again, that's another reason I love simulation. It's not just about, yes, physics, mechanics, but you want to do AI, you want to do computer science. This is an area where you can use all of those skills and provide some real value to the world.
And in this whole, this army of simulations engineers, they need some working knowledge of computer science and computing.
Correct.
But they're largely like mechanical, electrical, chemical domain engineers.
That's right.
What's the reason you think that's a good way to build your career?
Yeah, so look, I think everybody knows computers these days, right? So I think everybody grows up using computers. So almost anyone that graduates with a mechanical engineering or any other engineering for that matter knows a good amount of computer science. Okay, they know how to program. They're aware. They're quite familiar with using modern computer systems. So, and then you can, if you decide that you want to do something more advanced in computer science or related topics, you can go deeper. But you have the advantage of that physics background, that the mechanics background that you've already developed, and so you can branch out into different areas. So, as an example, in the software that we develop, there's a lot of math that goes into it, first of all, because at the end of the day, we are solving large systems of equations, okay? And I talk about hundreds of millions of degrees of freedom. And so there's a lot of math into, okay, how do we solve these problems very efficiently? So there's those algorithms that you need to develop, okay? Then at the end of the day, you have to code it. So there's the computer programming that comes into play. We use high-performance computing. We use parallel processing, GPUs. All of that requires knowledge of computer science, right? Then we also have, it's not just a bunch of text files or things like that. Everything is graphical. So the CAD tools that we use are graphical. Then from there, the simulation setup is graphical. The results that you visualize are graphical. Imagine wind flow over a car or over a wing of an airplane. So all of that requires graphics knowledge, right? So again, it requires computer science. So I feel that the mechanical engineering, computer metallurgy or metals or materials, that provides you with the foundation to do something that is profound, At the same time, if you have the aptitude for computer science, you can bring those skills to bear as well. So you're no longer just doing pure graphics, but you're doing graphics with understanding that I'm trying to get the wind flow over something, right? Or I want to show the temperature distribution, something like that, or even VR, AR, those kinds of things. So I think computer science has become, in my opinion, something that everybody does anyway. But in terms of differentiation, in terms of actually doing something that is profound and that's meaningful, I feel that simulation provides that vehicle, right? So you still love computer science, no problem. You can still use that in the context of simulation.
Let's talk very briefly about the world of electrical engineering, motors, machines, circuits.
Yeah.
What is simulations doing for that space?
Yeah, again, great question. So just most of what I've talked about is the mechanical space. That's my background, and that's what I've been doing for a long time. But certainly it's not limited. I said it's physics based, and I talked about Maxwell's equation, for example. So certainly whatever I talked about is applicable in the electronics area as well. Everything from electromagnetic interference to how do you design antennas, how do you design radar systems, how do you design semiconductors, and then of course there's the interplay between mechanical and electrical, right? So you need to worry about the heat dissipation in your electronics, things like that. So I think the worlds are coming together. So there's certainly a play for. You could be an electrical engineer, electronics engineer, and still use a whole bunch of simulation solutions out there for designing your circuits, designing how your PCBs may work, and how entire systems eventually come together.
Let's switch topics and talk about an area that I would never have imagined math would crack: life sciences.
Yeah.
You've spent some part of your professional life understanding or bringing the world of simulations closer to the world of life sciences.
Yeah.
Now, we saw what happened last year with the Nobel Prize, with AlphaFold winning, the design of AlphaFold. Really, cracking the way that AI or deep learning is able to model as fundamental a process as protein folding. Now, be that as it may, at the organ level, at the human physiology level, where is the world of math right now, and what are some exciting prospects there that I think our listeners should be aware of?
Yeah. So actually, it's a great point. I'll also mention that from a career perspective, or as you work in your careers, to explore your options. Okay, so keep your eyes and ears open for something that is interesting that you may not know as much about. So when I first thought about life sciences, yes, we had customers who are using our software for life sciences products, medical devices, implants, things like that. But thinking about modeling the organ, that was actually, I would say, luck in some ways. So I had a colleague who was very passionate about the modeling the human body, the heart in particular, and I was looking for something different to do. So this is where I remember I said biology. That came back, and so I said, okay, well, I think I can go back and refresh my biology to know enough about. I think I know how the heart works. I can refresh my knowledge there. Then the materials. Okay, so the heart at the end of the day is made up of different kinds of muscles. So I know material modeling. So maybe this is an area that I can add some value to. So it was a combination of luck, keeping my eyes and ears open, and the confidence. Okay. Now, yesterday we were talking about Atmavishwas, right?
Yeah.
So having the self-confidence that I have the background to be able to do this. So I approached my colleague and said, hey, I think this is something I'd like to get involved in. And then we figured out how I would be able to help him with his vision of where he wanted to take the simulation for modeling human organs. Okay, so great vision that he had. I think he's a former colleague now, but he's still working on this topic. And so there's a lot more complexity, right? So in traditional product design, you start with a model, geometry is well defined, and then your material choices are made, and then you proceed to figure out if the product is going to work properly. In the case of the organ, everybody is different. Okay, so yes, you might have some basic muscle types, but we all know that it's not the same for each individual. No heart, the shapes are different. Okay, so and then of course the physics are different. So think about the arteries in our bodies. So everything is different. So it's a very, very complex problem to solve because of all the variations that you see there. Okay, but that was the vision. So what we worked on at that point was to create a reference model that would be able to represent the key characteristics of the heart properly. And then the goal eventually was to make that personalized. So can you create a representative heart model for anybody? So
a digital twin.
Exactly of a living person, right? So so I'm not part of that project anymore, but I do follow it, and I'm happy to say that they've made quite a bit of progress there, and it is a fascinating area. And if I sometimes I wonder maybe I should have spent more time there, but it is.
So let's come back
area.
to this. I want to come back to this confidence, Atma Vishwas thing that you said. You worked in materials, mostly metals, ceramics, any other like physical materials. And how did you get this confidence to apply the same principles to living tissue now?
Yeah, so again, it goes back to the fundamentals, right? So if you break down the tissue into what is the mechanical response there, you can say it's hyper elastic, or add a little bit of viscoelasticity or something like that, right? So, but that's very similar to what you do for rubber. Okay?
Yeah.
So you could have worked in the automotive space, and maybe you're working on tires, and you know all about tires and the material response there. And guess what? You can take that experience and shift over to life sciences and work on tissues, right? And I know colleagues, I have friends who have actually made that jump from working in one industry to another. And that's, again, the beauty of simulation. I have plenty of colleagues who used to work in the automotive industry who have gone on to oil and gas or to life sciences or electronics. So you have the ability to shift industries as well. So from a career perspective, what more can you ask for from a job security perspective,
Absolutely.
right? You have the skills to say, okay, if one industry is not doing particularly well, I'm going to be able to take my skills, package it up, and have the confidence that I can succeed in another one.
So let's talk of that packaging it up, I think, on this. I think that's an important point, that you need to learn the language of the other domain you're getting into. What can a student do to sort of not look like a foreigner in a foreign land?
Yeah, I think right now there's plenty of materials available online that you can understand, okay, what are the main challenges of a particular industry, and you can actually, if you use a tool like Perplexity, you can even do deep research to say, okay, show me the similarities between an industry and another. So there's plenty of tools available now that makes it easier to, first of all, get the confidence that the skills that you have are transferable to another application. And the second point is to reach out to people. So again, it's not like 20 years ago. Now you have the ability to reach out to mentors, to alumni, and say, hey, I'm interested in a different career path. Can you advise me? So I think plenty of us are available to anybody that is interested in seeking that kind of input. So again, plenty of information available online. I would recommend you use those tools, especially with AI. Makes discovery a lot more easier. But at the end, I would say people connections do matter. So network way before you really need the help of the network, and then when you need the help, they're there to guide you.
That's a wonderful thought. Let's come back to the Living Heart project. What is the dream with being able to model an organ in silico? Yeah. What are some dream use cases?
No, a great question. And look, at the end of the day, the reason to model the heart there was to be able to develop better treatments for all kinds of diseases, or it could even be pediatric conditions. It could be something that somebody has inherited. How do we treat those kids, right? So that was the intent, that we should be able to use simulation to help develop treatments much better. And the treatments could be different kinds, right? It could be different types of devices. It could be a heart valve or a stent. How do you develop that with the confidence that it's going to work better? By actually testing it, simulating it in a representative population model of the heart, using the heart, okay? Instead of, I wouldn't say instead of, but the gold standard, of course, is going into patients, doing clinical trials, but this would inform maybe the design of the clinical trials. So the whole goal of the project, as envisioned by the founder of that project, was to help develop better treatments faster and help everybody. And you can think of that in not just for the heart, but for different parts of the body as well. You can even start using it for surgical planning, right? So you have a complex surgery that might have 5-6 different steps. what is the sequence in which you need to perform those surgeries. So those are ideas that are emerging from those kinds of projects to say, how can we use simulation in the life sciences area. So device development, certainly surgical planning, and even drug discovery. You touched upon proteins. How do drugs function in the body? So it's a different. So there's a lot of chemistry simulations and other things required there, but it's certainly in the feasible realm to say maybe we can test a drug in a representative simulation or a human body. Okay.
So we are at a point where the same army of mechanical and electrical engineers can reposition themselves as being ready for the world of life sciences.
Yeah.
They just need to first not be afraid of the world of life sciences.
Correct.
And second, become conversant with the language and with the thinking.
That's correct. So I to be honest, I don't know the current high school education system here, but at least
it's not changed very much.
Okay. So as I said, I was fortunate enough to study biology till, I actually studied it till 12th. Some people may stop after 10th, but I think that foundation is good enough to say, okay, I can pick this up if I need to. It's not that difficult. I mean, if you look at anybody that has achieved significant expertise in an area, it's about learning, the idea that we need to keep learning. And I think especially now that is very important, right? So once you have that foundational exposure, which I believe a lot of high school students have, then you can go back to that and say, I studied it 10 years ago, but so what? Let me refresh myself, get more informed, reach out to my network, and see what I can do with it.
Yeah, I think a day is not far away when life sciences companies have simulations engineers if they don't already have them.
Yeah.
Not just the biomedical equipment companies, but like hardcore pharma and companies that do work directly with organs and with living beings and living things. Mm-hmm. And also surgeons have engineers embedded in their teams.
Correct.
Like you talked of surgery planning.
Yeah.
Right? So what could that sort of career direction look like? Yeah,
great question. So first, I think there are companies who are already developing treatment options using simulation, right? So a company that recently went public in the US is a company called HeartFlow that uses CFD simulations to offer treatment options, right? So there are companies that are specializing in taking simulation technology and making it available for treatment decisions. Okay, so that's already happening. So if somebody is interested in startups in this area, I think it's a great area to look at it. Going back to your point about the surgeons or the doctors starting to use simulation. So yes, I think there's a small cohort that at least in the previously when we worked on it who were in the US the system is slightly different. So you have engineers who become doctors eventually. Okay, and those were great people for us to work with because they understood simulation, they understood, of course, the treatment options, the surgery, and so those were good candidates. But the question is, how do we simplify it? How do we present it to surgeons who know everything about about the treatment options, but how do we present information to them in a usable manner? And again, it's another flavor of democratization of simulation, where somebody may not even know what is CFD or what is Navier-Stokes or something like that. But if the recommendations that might be coming might be based on those physics, and so once we build up the confidence that those recommendations are working well, then somebody who doesn't know anything about simulation is actually using simulation-based intelligence to make decisions. Okay, I think that's also pretty powerful in many ways.
I think with life sciences particularly, and we'll leave that topic now. Yeah. With life sciences, there's no idea of product design, but there is certainly the idea of a digital twin.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. And what you can do with the twin in silico without messing with the real organ out there.
Yeah, exactly.
That holds tremendous promise, I'm sure.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, there's also many cases there's a device, right? So but can you personalize that device? Okay, so in that sense, it is not just a standard device that you put inside any patient, or you might have 3 sizes that you pick from, but can you personalize it? And in some cases, the choice might be that just 3 sizes are adequate or 3 different designs are adequate, but some cases you may really need to tailor it to a patient, right? So simulation opens the door to those possibilities as well.
The one that I know, dental implants are highly already personalized.
Correct. Exactly. And,
right?
And by the way, the sequence of which tooth to move, if you have a series of I forget what the terminology is. Braces, exactly. A series of braces that you're going to be using. Some of that is decisions are made actually by simulation. Okay, so there are companies who already do that to say, okay, this is the sequence in which we're going to, the braces you're going to use based on your teeth configuration, right? So that's, you don't think about it. As a normal person who goes to the dentist's office, you may not even think about it, but there's simulation intelligence already powering those decisions.
Wonderful. Let's talk of this phrase that you said now. We won't go beyond domains. Simulation intelligence.
Yeah.
Okay. This is, I think, increasingly becoming a very sort of sought after intelligence. And it encompasses a set of skills that are not typically taught in colleges, right? Directly. So let's talk about simulation intelligence and what you mean by it, and what have you seen as this simulation intelligence that is required?
Yeah. So it's very broad. I think it's gone through an evolution, right? So initially, if you look at the initial phases of simulation, it was you would run a simulation, but it was the human, the expert running the simulation who would say, okay, this is the analysis I'm going to do on this based on these results. Here are the changes I'm going to make. Okay, so that has come a long way. That still is very important. But then we've been able to make simulation more accessible to somebody who is maybe not an expert in simulation or in the physics, but they know the product very well.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're using simulation guided intelligence to make those design choices.
Yeah.
Okay. Then comes the next level, as using AI, for example. If we can package up simulation intelligence and make it available to somebody who doesn't know anything about simulation. As an example, there may be somebody on the shop floor who is welding, or maybe you're programming a robot to do a series of complex welding operations, okay? And you want to make corrections based on what you're seeing on the shop floor. It could be that the temperatures that you expected are slightly off. How is that going to affect the quality of the product? Maybe the speeds need to be adjusted, or maybe the torch distance is a little bit off. Okay, so how do you adjust for those things? And so we can use simulation-based intelligence to guide those decisions on the shop floor without the operator even knowing that it's powered by simulation. Right? So you can see that it's becoming much more pervasive. And what I see happening in the future is many of the, pretty much everything around us could have simulation-based intelligence. So think of the chips, the processors that are in your computers or in a car or in a plane. Now, today they're programmed to make some decisions based on some experts might have coded it in a particular way. We can supplement that with simulation-based intelligence to say, based on sensor measurements, maybe adjustments need to be made. This is already starting to play out, for example, in ADAS, which is autonomous driving or advanced driver assist systems, where there are some decisions that are being made in the car that are powered by simulation. Not necessarily pre-packaged simulations that have been run and decisions are being made, but actually making decisions using sensors and saying, okay.
And a simulation running real time.
Exactly. So getting to real-time simulation. Exactly. And the real-time simulation is, you talked about a lot of computer science and things like that. It brings us back to that, right? How do you take simulations that used to take days or hours and make it run in real time? Okay. There's a lot of algorithmic changes that you can make. There's certainly computing power that you can utilize, and then AI comes into play as well. So combination of these is what's going to make real-time simulation intelligence available, right? And that's going to transform the world around us. And in fact, yesterday or day before, I was at a conference where I was talking about this, and it occurred to me that brings us closer to Maya. Are we creating a simulation environment around us where decisions are being made by some unknown, untouchable authority out there, right?
Sure.
So yeah, it's just a little bit of a philosophy out there. So.
I think where there is a good simulations possibility, with a physics-based model. A data-based AI tool is not the way to go. I mean, if you have a believable physics-based model, I think there's great wisdom in sticking to it. Would you argue with that, or are there cases where you've seen a database tool really overtake the possibilities in a simulations of a physics-based tool?
Yeah, I would not say overtake. I see the two going hand in hand, right?
Okay.
So physics-based simulations or physics-based AI is certainly, I think we have a lot more confidence in it. Okay, so because at the underlying, we can explain what things are happening or why things are happening.
Yeah.
But there's certainly value in leveraging large amounts of data and trying to use the data to make certain decisions. In many cases, that can be faster. You can get to a decision faster, but you may not have the reasoning behind it. So I think the two go hand in hand. And in fact, many of our customers who've been using simulation for years had the I would say the advanced idea that we need to manage all of this data. So they've been managing simulation data for well over a decade, for example.
Wow.
Okay, in some cases, and they also have the corresponding test data. And guess what? Now you have all this physics-based simulation data and the test data to validate those simulations. You have a great data set to train your AI models. Okay, so data management is absolutely key, because you're running more simulations. As I said, okay, you can run it faster. What used to take days take maybe minutes now. You're going to run many more variations, many more design studies. But then using that data to train your AI, that's a very healthy cycle in some ways. Okay.
Let's now talk about the human beings involved in this simulations space, like you were as a young man early on. What are some skills beyond colleges that they should learn to really be ready for this space?
Yeah, very good question. I would say the soft skills are very important. Sometimes we get just focus on the technology and get too hung up about that. I would say I mentioned networking.
Yeah.
So that is very important, and to do it well ahead of time. I'm sure people will respond to you when you need them, but I think it's a good idea to network ahead of time. So meeting, going to conferences, attending conference, whether it's virtual or in person, and so that is one aspect that I would encourage everybody to take advantage of. And you can see that's the power of ecosystem as well, right? So IITM Tech Park is because everybody collaborates with each other, that networking. The second that I find quite helpful is focusing on your writing skills, your presentation skills. Okay, sometimes it's very not paid much attention to, but it helps. So that helps with your communications. It helps you present an argument in a compelling fashion, and that helps you present yourself as a good decision maker, explaining things in a clear, concise manner. Okay, so I remember in high school we used to have this. I think it was called Pressy writing. Given a topic, explain it very, very clearly in 3 sentences or something like that. I think that's a very powerful tool to be able to convey the value of something. So communication and networking, those are 2 topics that I would definitely encourage everybody to pay attention to.
And broadly, programming, that's something they should become good at? Of
course. So I see programming as almost everybody does it. So it's a table stakes in that sense. You don't have to be an expert. I will say that I never was an expert programmer, but I've done enough programming in my days to develop software, right? So I think with the education system we have there, with computers being pervasive, I think I would expect that everybody has a certain level of programming proficiency. I don't think the languages, things like that matter, but just having experience with programming does help you keep your options open.
And a simulations engineer, say at Hexagon, do they come with domain knowledge? Like, for example, you may be working with an auto industry customer.
It's a mix. So if I look at our teams, some of them are, I would say PhDs or masters in mechanics. So it could be mechanical engineering or something. And again, with a basis of a foundation of programming, that they come in and then we can coach them on the computer sciences aspect. But they bring in the domain knowledge from a physics perspective. We do have our team members who worked in an industry for many years, and then they said, okay, you know what? I've seen the problems here. I'm going to help develop a solution that will make life easier for many customers in this case. So as an example, I have a colleague who worked, I think, 15 years in Ferrari, and is back here helping us develop our linear dynamics software, right? So it's a combination of industry knowledge and of course domain knowledge. We also have computer science experts who help us on everything from graphics, database, and they help us develop some of those solutions as well. So it's a mix in a company like ours. So some domain experts, subject matter experts in terms of mechanics or CFD or things like that, or computer science experts, and industry experts who come back to say they know the industry problems, they've experienced it, they've lived it, so they can provide guidance so our products actually meet the needs of our customers.
And at your customer side, where they're on the user end of your products, what are those people like? I mean, are they domain experts as well, or?
So again, it's a combination. So I would say there are people who come through who focus on the products, and simulation is just another tool for them, and that's quite okay because there are different problems that you need to solve, and so there are subject matter experts in, like, okay, how do I make this part the best, right? So they could be manufacturing experts, and simulation is just one tool in their tool set to make the best product. Okay, and then there are people who actually, we have former employees who have taken the experience of developing simulation or even helping our customers with customer support type roles. Who have gone on to work in many of those companies as well. So it goes both ways in terms of the directionality of career choices.
I think all things said, this is going to be in my opinion, fastest growing world alongside AI that we are already seeing in a big way.
Right.
We promised to come back to math.
Yeah.
So let's talk. What has your training in math done for your own professional career?
Yeah.
And why should a young student today be sort of passionate and take to math?
Yeah. I have a very simple answer to that. Okay. So math, I loved math, and as I said, I had a choice to make, and I picked engineering and I came here. But a lot of my PhD was quite advanced math. Okay. And if you're doing mechanics, you probably have heard of a term called tensor. Okay. And so I did tensors all the time. And guess what? If you read AI technology right now, you'll see the term tensors all around the world, right? It's the same tensors. So guess what? The mechanics training that gave me continued access to math that I loved, if I chose to, I could use it in a completely different domain altogether.
Yes.
Right? So a lot of the math that you learn, it's more applied, certainly. It wasn't, if maybe in a different career, it might have been researching in new types of math equations or technologies. So my experience was more applied, but I was certainly able to use that throughout my career, right? So again, I come back to linear algebra. A lot of what we do is how do we solve large systems of equations? Guess what? It's at the end of the day.
And partial differential equations.
Exactly. Finite element methods is partial differential equation. So, and then you go to controls and other things. Guess it's the same, different kinds of differential equations there. So math is everywhere around us, and you will continue to be able to leverage it in your career. So don't give up your passion for math. Okay. And
so a postgraduate student, a postgraduate in math, listening to this conversation, what can they do to sort of find their way into this world of simulations?
Yeah, so again, I think first of all, you can understand how these simulation products are built, what's the background behind it, and you will find that there is a lot of math that it goes into any of the simulation software that is developed, right? And I think that exposure, that discovery will help any of the students understand the applications of their math technologies there. And sometimes they may even have ideas that will allow simulation technologies to be leapfrogged. So that discovery process is what I would suggest everyone do. And you can reach out to developers, your former alumni who've been developing this software to understand what math is being used in these software, right? And then of course, if you're interested, we can also provide guidance on maybe a little bit of physics or a little bit of other topics that you don't need too much. Your high school level, with a little bit of help, I think we can get you to the point where you understand the problems you're trying to solve. So I think that discovery phase would help. So networking and again, online discovery. So that way you understand how whatever math problems you're working on, what are the possible applications in the simulation area.
And companies like like yours, Hexagon,
Yeah.
you have active university engagement programs.
Yeah, exactly. So a great point. So we actually just had a conference here, with a lot of focus on academics, skilling engineers. So in fact, Professor Kamakoti was on the panel as well. And so yes, we offer first of all teaching editions of our software, student editions of our software. We have university engagement programs. We have internship programs, and it's not just us, right? Pretty much any company in the space have a very healthy presence with working with universities, and so I would recommend that you take advantage of that. In our case, we also have student ambassador programs where we kind of we nurture them. If somebody is really interested in simulation, we give them a little bit more help, so then they can represent simulation in the different universities that they're presented. So many of our almost every company in the space has a very healthy academic program. So any student that is interested, I would encourage you to reach out, and happy to help in any way we can.
Mahesh, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I think there is so much to be gained from this world of simulations for society at large. There's so much value yet to be created with the new ideas that are in the pipeline. Thank you so much for making time.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. It's as I said, this is always home, and so happy to help anyway. And students listening, please do reach out if me or anybody in my network can help you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
This is another episode of the Professor Mahesh Podcast, your resource to help you make informed career decisions. This podcast is brought to you by IITM Global, an initiative of the Office of Global Engagement at IIT Madras. IITM Global stands for Everything IIT Madras Going Global. Learn more about what they do and how you can benefit from the activities of IITM Global through the link in the description below. Until we meet again, be well, do good, and keep in touch. Goodbye.